Okay. So let's begin. This is a class in preparation for Rosh chodesh Elul, and it's amazing that Elul's a couple of days away. So we're going to spend some time kind of learning about Elul and what it's about before we get into it. And throughout Elul, we're going to do a weekly class to go more in depth on Elul and pre-Rosh Hashanah this year. So I want to start with the Bnei Yisachar, and a lot of what the class is going to be connected to the teachings of the Bnei Yisachar, which is going to give us a real taste of the month specifically. And so we all know that the Bnei Yisachar really brings in many levels of learning on every single month, going through the times, and there are many aspects to each month. The first is the mazal. The mazal of Elul is the betula, the young maiden, they say, and one of the first things the Bnei Yisachar says is that the betula is the same gematria Eim Abanim Smecha, hallelujah, and that tshuva is the same as bina ima ilah. So the Bnei Yisachar says we're going to talk about what this actually means in a minute, and throughout the class a little bit. But he says in the beginning of this teaching that by contemplating and looking into the hints and studying this about this month, about the month of Elul, what can happen is that it can really help awaken our will, because all of the days of this month, all of the days of the month of Elul, are days of willfulness. Okay, so why is this so? Why is the basis of this month will? That every single day is a day of willfulness. So it was in these days that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to receive the luchot the second time. Right, the first time, so just do a little yearly history, the history of the greater sivuv of the year, of going through the months of the year. So we just got through these hottest months of the year, Tammuz and Av, and as we know, Tammuz is an extraordinarily heavy month. Why? Because for many reasons, but the first luchot, when the Torah was given, the first luchot, as we know, they were broken, right? They were not. It didn't work out, because when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain with the luchot, he saw the dancing around the golden calf and broke the luchot, and this is all connected to also the heaviness of the months of Tammuz and Av, because there was a whole reaction to this, and on many levels throughout time, throughout history. Those days in Tammuz and Av were days, the darkest, most of the challenging days for the Jewish people, because of this brokenness. Underlying it is the brokenness of the breaking of the luchot, which is connected to the sin of the spies, of looking at the world not looking at the world with a positive eye. And then comes along Elul, this month that's just upon us in a few days. And in this month, Moshe Rabbeinu went to get the tablets the second time and brought them down, and therefore Hashem was very pleased with Am Yisrael in this month, and it says that he was pleased with us and he forgave us. And so the fact that Hashem was pleased with us and forgave us and really started over with us in this time, in this month, is a reconnection. It's a time of willfulness. It says in Hebrew how Hashem was pleased with us. How do you say it in Hebrew? Say Nitratzeh Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael b'simcha v'machal lahem. That Hashem Nitratzeh was pleased with us. It could also be translated as He was like Ratzon, like that. There's a willfulness awakening in this time. And therefore, in these days, in every single day of this month, they became forevermore, from that moment on, days of awakening for us to return, to do tshuva, and to come close. And it said that Hashem's right hand is extended to receive those returning, and we're going to start to read inside. It's just a little bit of an introduction, but there's a lot of this text that I want to read inside that we're going to go through today, reading it inside, because it's just awesome and it's really, really insightful for this month. So we're in the first teaching, Ma'amar Aleph of Rosh Chodesh Elul in the Bnei Yisachar. So we'll read inside. I'll read the Hebrew and I'll translate it to English as we go. So it says, Matzah isha matzah tov, v'yafek ratzon me Hashem. So there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, finding a good wife is finding good, which awakens ratzon from Hashem. Imeyot she'en mikra yotze midei pshuto. Im kol ze b'derech remez nireli lefaresh al chodesh Elul v'al yedei ze yunach lanu shapir v'yafek ratzon v'chulei. So it says that all we need is to look at this in a straightforward sense, and from this, says the Bnei Yisachar, from this we can glean out of what we're going to be able to learn by looking into the hints of this month of Rosh Chodesh Elul, to not only understand the month, but to awaken our will. Right? It's a time of willfulness, and by learning about the month itself, it only makes sense that our will would be awakened in this time. V'ne'emar, T'hine yemei Elul hen hema yemei ratzon. Hayamim sha'ala Moshe lahar lekabel luchot achronot v'nitratzeh Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael b'simcha machal lahem. So it says that these days of Elul, which is, I said before outside, we're reading it inside now. These are days of ratzon. Ratzon means willfulness. Why? These are the days that Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain again to receive the luchot, the final luchot, and Hashem was pleased with us, and He was happy, and He forgave us. ומאז והלאה ימים האלו הם ימי רצון לעורר נפשות ישראל בתשובה. And from then on, from this happening on, these became days of awakening and willfulness for the souls of Israel to do tshuva, to return. וכביכול וימינו יתברך שמו פשוטו לקבל שבים. It's as if to say, כביכול, that the right hand of Hashem is outstretched to receive whoever wants to return. והנה מיום שחטא אדם הראשון ונמשך אחר עץ הדת טוב ורע, הנה יש בכל אדם מציאת טוב ורע. ועל פי הרוב הרע מתגבר ונדמה לאדם בדעתו שזהו הטוב. אבל בעת שמתעורר הרצון העליון לעורר נפשות ישראל לתשובה, הנה מוצא האדם בדעתו את הטוב. הוא מתחרט ושב על הרע וממשיך אליו רצון העליון ויקובל בתשובה שלמה. Okay, long sentence, but this is a really key and interesting idea that he's bringing up. He says, so now we got a sense that this month is a month of willfulness and a time to be received and brought back in by Hashem. Anyone who makes an effort to come back in closeness will be responded to. And then he says, really from the very beginning, from the day when Adam Rishon sinned, and went after the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So ever since that day, every single person finds within himself good and evil. Right? Before that day, there was no such thing as this is good and that's evil. But once the sin of the tree of knowledge happened, suddenly every single person finds in themselves good and they find in themselves not so good or evil. What usually happens with a person is that the negativity, the ra, is its strength. It strengthens itself, and the person in their mind starts to believe that this is good. It's a little bit of a confusing line, right? A person knows they find bad and good inside themselves, and the bad makes its strong effort to be a big part of the person, and the person starts to get used to this part of themselves, and even convinces themselves that it's good, right? So we know that if we do something wrong over and over again, we start to convince ourselves that it's not so wrong, that it's fine to do it because we're used to doing it, and even that we might think that it's good. He says, but when this time comes, which is just about to come, these days of Ratzon and Tshuva, of Elul, that there's an awakening of this higher will to awaken the souls of Israel to return to Tshuva, suddenly a person finds in his mind the good, the real good, and regrets having gone after the evil and the bad. And therefore, by suddenly awakening this will to the good inside of ourselves, inside of each person, so then it says that the Ratzona Elyon, the higher will, then comes upon the person. It shines into the person, awakens in the person, and he's received in Tshuva. Right? So we have this kind of confusing situation where we're set up ever since the sin, which is the beginning of all confusion, right? Ever since that moment, there's good and evil inside of the person. The person gets confused and used to this part of themselves that is connected to non-connection, to evil, to not so good, even to the point of convincing themselves that it is good. And then these special days of Elul come along, and the person's will, because these are days of willfulness to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Hashem, that person, all of us, we're awakened to the real good inside of ourselves. And because of this tiny little awakening to the real good inside of ourselves, the higher will of Hashem, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is awakened towards us, and we are received in tshuva, in total tshuva. V'zeu hanirmaz matzah isha, כשצורכי האדם לבוא לימי אלול, שמזלו אישה, היינו בתולה, אז מצא טוב, אז ידע ויבחין בין הטוב וכולי, ואז יפק רצון מהשם. So this is why did he bring that pasuk in the beginning, saying, Matzah isha matzah tov, finding a wife is finding good, finding a wife is finding good. What's the connection? Isha, a wife, is like a betula, is a woman. So it's saying that Elul, the month of Elul, is compared to this woman. So a person comes to these days of Elul, comes to these days of the betula, and finds good, and suddenly is able to make have discernment to look and see, be able to discernment, be able to look and see, oh, this is the good in me. There's a sudden awakening in this month to see the good in themselves. And therefore, by finding the good, a person is able to clarify between the good and the evil, and therefore our will is all the more so awakened. The higher will, even of the Creator Himself, of Kadosh Baruch Hu, is then awakened, and we are received for tshuva. So let's go on, we'll talk about it more. ואומר לך, על פי הנ"ל, מצא אישה כנ"ל, מצא טוב, דהנה אמרו רז"ל, מפני מה אין אות ט' בדברות ראשונים, Shelo yamru Yisrael, bishvat luchot, chas v'shalom, paska tova. So going further into this idea that by finding a woman, a wife, is finding good, say the sages, why in the first place, why in the first luchot, when the first tablets were created, was it missing the letter tet, right? The letter tet is the first letter of the word tov. And so they say, because these luchot needed to be broken, wouldn't want to say, God forbid, that good stopped, right? That the good was cut off because the tablets were broken and they had a tet in them. Al kain beluchot achronot she'ala Moshe lekablam bimei elu nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu liYisrael v'nichtav beluchot leman yitav lach. It says, therefore, these second tablets, the tablets that did last, that weren't broken, Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get them in the days of Elul, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was pleased with us and wrote in the Luchot, as it says in Devarim, Leman Yitav Lach, in order for it to be good for you. Yitav Lach has a tet in it, right? This letter tet comes in the second Luchot. Hine yamim ha'elu mesugalim limtzo hatov. These days are, therefore, special days to find the good. V'havena davar, v'zeo shnirmaz gamkein b'Torah. So this is something, again, to contemplate. And I want to just say it once again. It's an important point to keep in mind, that these teachings that we have are spiritual teachings, are not for intellectual exercise. They might be interesting for our minds to understand and go through these different teachings, but the deeper level takes contemplation. It's not just about understanding things with our mind. We have to think about it. The Vena Davar, when he says this, it means it's something to really contemplate, right? To take some time and consider it and think about it. How these days that we're stepping into now are days of willfulness, are days of being able to find the good in ourselves. And they're literally days where good was brought into the world in a whole new way, by Moshe Rabbeinu bringing down the tablets the second time. Okay, let's go on. V'zeu shenirmaz gam kein b'Torah, b'tzar lach haynu k'shiyeh lach tzar v'lo teda lavchin ben tov v'chulei, azai hamitzaucha kol advarim ha'ele ba'achrit hayamim haynu yimei Elul, achrit hashana. Az yavo lecha itaruta dela'ela min haratzon ha'elyon ve'iru einecha et asher lo tov asita v'shavta el ad v'chulei ki yaminu pshuta. So going deeper into this, it is hinted in the Torah, also in Devarim, where it says "Batzar lecha," when you have constrictions, when you have difficulties. So what's difficult? What's the definition of having difficulties? Having a situation that's difficult is when it's hard to tell between what is good and what is bad, what is good and what is evil. And it says also, all of these things will come to bear in the end of days. Right? So it's the bigger end of days, and there's also the end of days of the year. The end of days every year are Elul, right? The end of the days of the year are Elul. This last month of the year before Tishrei are called the end of days of that year. And therefore, there's this awakening from above, which comes from the higher will, and our eyes are enlightened in order to see what we haven't done right. Right, it's looking at it from the other side. In these days, this greater awakening, this willfulness that is coming from above, awakening helps us to see and look and see what we have done and see what we have done that hasn't been so good in this month. And then we can return, because we need to know what we need to return from in order to return. And not only that, but that the right hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is outstretched to receive us, to take us back. Okay, so we're going now. We're on letter Dalet in this first ma'amar of Elul in the Bnei Yissaschar. V'hine katavti lach tam la'amim ha'ele shehem yemei ratzon al shebehem hayta lita Moshe lekabel luchot archonot v'nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael v'hine omer lecha hayamim ha'elu hem biskula l'ratzon ha'elyon me'ed briat ha'olam Dihine b'tishrei nivra ha'olam l'dad Rabbi Eliezer de sugan kavate kamo shamrim ze hayom techilat ma'asecha. So going into this deeper, as he already said, these days are days of willfulness, and these are the days that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to receive the tablets the second time, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem was pleased with Israel, and then it says that these are days that are special days for this higher will, this special time from the very beginning of creation, not just from when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get the tablets the second time, from the very beginning of creation, as it says in the Gemara that the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that Tishrei is the time, this month right after Elul is the month when the world was created. Okay, as it says in Musaf of Rosh Hashanah davening in the Machzor, Ze hayom dechilat ma'asecha. This day, Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, Tishrei, is the beginning of your doings, Hashem. Hine briat ha'olam haya b'ratzon. The beginning of the creation of the world is an important thing to know. If we're in relationship with the creator of the world, it's an important thing to know that this creation happened willfully, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the world. Ki ein ze chas hashalom k'uman shepoel b'pulato lashtim chesrono. Because the creation of the world is not, God forbid, like some type of craftsman who's creating something because something needs to be filled, that something is lacking. Ki hu yitbarach shemo shalem b'tachlit hashlemut. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator, is totally whole. He doesn't need anything. Rak shebara'u lamo b'ratzon hitev libruav. But when He created the world, He did it to bring good to His creation. So, not only do these days of Elul take us back to the beginning of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the second Luchot, where He was pleased with us, where we started again, these tablets were not destroyed, and therefore the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is awakened to connect to the creation. It takes us all the way back to the very beginning of creation, that the creation was done with will, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the world. And so the willfulness that's deep in these days of Elul goes all the way back to the very, very beginning. V'omer lach od, hine, b'ratzon hazeh, she'ala b'ratzono yitbarach shemo, livrat ha'olam, hine Yisrael, ala b'machshava. And he says to take this even deeper, that this will that came up, that rose in the willfulness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the Creator, to create the world, when this awakened, not only did he decide, I will create the world, he thought about Yisrael. He thought about Israel. As it says, Breshit bishvil Yisrael, shnikru'u Reshit, that Breshit, the beginning, the creation of everything, is for Israel, who are called Reshit, were called the beginning. Dihine aborei kol yitbarach shemo ala b'rtzono, sheyivra olam kazem, sheyeh kol ha'pu'alot, v'ma'asim nasin al yadei itaruta delatata. So the Creator of everything, Yitbarach Shemo, it rose in His will that He would create a world, this world, just like the world that we're in, that everything that would happen, all of the happenings and doings, would come through with an awakening from below. Im kein kiviyachol haya be'echrach breshid ha'machshava Hakduma eze inyan itaruta. If the whole world is created on this basis that there's an awakening, whether it's from below or above, then it has to be founded on, there has to be a foundation of all of creation that is connected to awakening. כדי שיהיה אחר כך כן הנהגת כל העולמות על ידי התערותא דלתתא. Because this foundational beginning of everything being connected to an awakening, therefore, forevermore, there would be an awakening connected to these times, to the beginning. כי הכל הולך אחר יסוד, שהוא שורש הכל. This comes up, Rav Shlomo likes to say this, that this is the headwaters, right? When there's the beginning of something, has everything in it, right? And if you learn the very first story of anything in the Torah, in that very first story it has everything, that every other story that will be related to that story already within it. And it's true also in a family, right? The firstborn child of a family, the energy in the firstborn of a family has the energy of all of the children of the family in it. So he says here that everything goes after the foundation, which is the roots of everything, which is the beginning of everything. So the beginning of the creation has to do with these elements that he's brought up so far of willfulness and awakening. Hine ezi teruta haya be'efshar liot az. So this brings up a good question. What kind of awakening could there be in the very beginning of creation? There wasn't anything yet, right? Nothing was created. How could there be an awakening? V'hine kivyachol hispich machshavatan shel Yisrael asher alu b'machshava lefanav shiplu mitzvot u'masim tovim. Ze haya maspik li'taruta. So he says it seems to be that it was enough, this little rising in his thoughts about Israel, about Yisrael, meaning us, the Jewish people. This awakening about the Jewish people arose in his mind. Why? Why would that be enough for all of the awakenings of after that, for all of creation? Because we would do mitzvot, we would do masim tovim, the good that we would bring to the world and do by being the Jewish people, by following the Torah, doing mitzvot and masim tovim. This is enough for this awakening. V'zeu sheramzu chazal nimlach b'nishmoteim shel tzadikim hema yotzim yoshvei neta'im im hamelech v'malchuto v'hine hagam shelo hayu Yisrael adayin b'mitziut v'lo siglu adayin mitzvot u'masim tovim. But then he brings up a great question. How could it be that the thought of Israel doing mitzvahs and doing good deeds was enough for this awakening for the world? Nothing had happened yet. There was no Jewish people yet. It was just the beginning, the very beginning of the creation. Just the thought of the fact that there would be a Jewish people doing mitzvot someday seems to have been enough for the creation. But this was enough for the awakening. Just by thinking of Israel, that we would, when we were created, afterwards start to do mitzvot and masim tovim. Hine nishar koach hazeh b'yemei ratzon halalu be'elul she'az haya ratzon hazeh b'shat briat ha'olam. So this energy of awakening and in these days of will in Elul comes from the very, very beginning, even way before we even existed, even before all of creation existed. Right before all of the creation happened, this little thought came up in the thoughts of the chodesh Baruch Hu, of Israel, that one day we would do mitzvot and masim tovim, and this in itself was enough to create the world. So these times of awakening would come again and again, year after year. ומאז והלאה הוגבל לדורות. אפילו חס ושלום אין זכות ביד ישראל, רק מקבלים על עצמם לעשות כשיבאסו מצרתם ועניתם ומרודם. הנה השם יתברך שיודע ועד אשר ישראל בטבעם המה לחלקו יתברך שמו ובוחרים אותו לעבוד לבדו. So he says, ever since then, since the very beginning of creation, there was this energy there was this time, this essence there of these times, that even when we don't have any merit, even when we're out of it and we're not doing mitzvot, and so many different phases of history where we've gone off track, even in those times, there and where we've rebelled and we've gotten totally off, Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, knows that there is, and put within us, that there is an essence of who we are, that we are those, or we are a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we choose Him. We only choose HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is remembered throughout Dore Doro, through all of time, no matter where we're holding, no matter what's flying and what it seems like is going on, might seem to be the lowest of times. There is an essential aspect of who we are, that we are connected to the Creator, and that we choose the Creator. ורק תוקף הגלות וצרות והעוני והשיבוד מונע אותם. הנה מספיק גם כעת הסיגול מה שיסגל אחר כך, כמו בשעת בריאת העולם, שהיה הדבר רק ברצונו יתברך שמו. So really saying that why do we struggle so much? Why have we struggled so much throughout time? Because we've gone through the galus. We've been very far. We've had to be very far over and over again, and yet in the deepest essence of the will of Hashem, we exist, and our existence is connected to doing good things, Masim Tovim, bringing light to the world, Torah and Masim Tovim, and because of that, no matter how far we fall, there's always this place, as this thought arose in the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we are connected. And this brings us back to the very foundations of learning about tshuva, which is the Rambam. The Rambam, and speaking about the Baal Tshuva, says, V'ya'id alav hayodea ta'alumot v'chulei, v'zeo she'anachnu omrim b'nusach tefilatenu b'yamei haratzon halalu, hashivenu Hashem elecha mikodem v'nashuva achar kach. V'yaspich kol ze v'hagam שלא עשינו עדיין תשובה כשורה, רק כשתעזור לנו, ותשיבנו אליך, אז נשובה אליך. So this is what it says in the prayers that come up again and again, over and over again throughout these times in Elul, that we say in these days of willfulness, return to us, return us to you from the earlier times, v'nashuva achar kach. So really, we need to be returned to these earliest times, and then we can return to you. And so it works out that even though we didn't do anything yet, that we were brought back. Part of tshuva is that we were brought back even before we even came back. And us being brought back, it's built into the fabric of who we are as a people, that we can return because we're already in our essence returning, even though we hadn't done anything yet. Rakshata azor lanu v'tashivenu elecha az nashuv elecha. We need a Kadosh Baruch Hu's help. We need the help of the Creator of the universe to bring us back, and then we can choose to come back. V'zeu chadesh amenu kekedem haynu kiyamim hakadmoniot yemei kedem haynu yemei breshit. And then we say, return to us, and we will return to you, and then we'll be brought back to Yemei Kedem. Yemei Kedem is the earliest of days, which is Yemei Breshit, the beginning of the creation. Shelo siganu az adayin mitzvot u'masim tovim, v'gam afilu b'mitziut adayin lo ha'inu. As we said before, we had no schut of Torah and mitzvot in those days because it hadn't happened yet. And still, we're being brought back to this very foundational time of our very creation. Im kol zeh hispik machshavatenu lechidush hazman ha'olam al yedei ma shenaseh u'nesagel achar kach. So the chidush, the awakening from the creation from the very beginning, it was enough that we would, and it still is enough, that we will do something after the fact. The foundation of the creation of who we are has built into it this little inkling of what we will do as we come into ourselves, which is year after year happening over and over again. And that's enough. That's enough to bring us back. Im ken gam ata, asei imanu leman shemecha, chidush hazman letova, lishua avur hakabbalah, ma she'anachnu mekablim al atzmenu lashuv elecha b'tshuva achar ha-yeshua v'avein. So if that's the case, now this is kind of turning towards being not just a teaching, but a prayer from the Bnei Yissaschar saying, so do this for us again. Here we come again, around the cycle of the year to Elul, and saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bring us back again. The zchut to reawaken, the time of being a new awakening time, a chidush of the time for goodness and Yeshua of salvations, in order to receive what we will receive by eventually doing tshuva. So any tshuva, it's a very circular thing. Any returning that we do, the whole beginning of creation is based on it in the first place, and it gives us koach to do it in the second place. Any tiny inkling of an awakening. And so the Yeshua, the salvation, actually even came before we ever did it. And that gives us the energy to do it again and again and again, this year as we do in every year. So then it says further, Az tismach betula b'machol, shamati me'et shar b'sari harab ha'chasid ha'kadosh, Elazar tzal menuchat kvodo b'Lezhensk. He learned from the Rebbe of Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk, Az tismach betula. Then the young maiden will be happy. She will be made happy. Hainu remez lechodesh Elul asher mazalo betula hine tismach. So this line saying then this young maiden will be pleased, will be happy. This is a hint to this month, to the month of Elul. B'machol kashimchol HaKadosh Baruch Hu avenotenu shel Yisrael. It says she'll be happy in machol. Specifically, machol also means a dance, a circle dance. And it also means to be forgiven, right? So in these days, these are the days where we're forgiven for everything that we've ever done wrong by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the days of Elul. So these are the words of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. And then he goes on to explain, V'hine, siamti perush hapasuk lefi zeh, bachurim zekenim yachtav, zekenim hayinu otam she'ayu tzadikim, Mikara, Bachurim Hayinu Habali Tshuva, the Have Kivriya Chadasha Ki'ilu Nodu Mechadash. Kulam Yiyu Yachtav. So he comes to explain something very beautiful. He said that there's a pasuk that says Bachurim Uskenim Yachtav, the youth and the elders together. The elders, so he's explaining, what do each of these stand for? The skenim are those who, from the beginning, are tzaddikim. The elders who were always righteous from the very beginning. Bachurim, who are the bachurim? So that's the elders. The bachurim are the balei tshuva, those who return and become like a new creation. Meaning, they weren't always perfect. They weren't always on this righteous level, and in their returning, it's as if they're reborn. They're created again. And it says that by this pasuk, skeni ubachrim yachtav, all of them are brought together. They're all together. Also the balei tshuva, who had to come from this level of returning from a low level and returning, and the tzaddikim that never fell to this level of needing to come back from a low level. They're all brought together. U'me'ayin ha'anal ba'ofen acher, b'simchat beit ha'shueva, hayot tzadikim g'morim, meshabchim v'omrim, ashrei yaldutenu, shelo bisha et zikunatav, היו משבחים ימי הבחרות. והבעלי תשובה היו אומרים, אשרי זקנותנו, שכיפרה על ילדותנו. So it comes in Simchat Beit HaShoeva. There's a line that says that the totally righteous, the tzaddikim gemorim, would praise and say, blessed and happy is those who were born from the very beginning, who were pure from the very beginning, and they would praise that because that's who they were. And the Bali Tshuva would say, praised are those the elders, right? The tzaddikim would say, praised are we from birth, because from birth they were righteous and pure. And the Bali Tshuva would say, wow, praised are we are from in our elder years, because in those days we returned. They praised that phase of life. So each one is praising the opposite phase of life. And this is what he says is why this pasuk brings the two together. B'acharim uskenim yachdav. It's really both of them. Henotam hameshabchim. They're both praising each other and covering all bases. Yemei bachrut hem otam shemeshabchim yemei zikina. So the one end of the spectrum praises the other, and it's all brought together. And they're brought together for life and peace. And it says in Sefer Yetzirah that the letter of this month, moving forward, the letter of this month is a letter Yud. Okay, so the letter Yud, as we know, is the most basic letter of all of the letters of Bereshit. It's a point, one little dot. B'maseh, v'kasher lo keter v'tziruf ze b'zeh, v'tzar behem v'tula b'olam v'elul b'shana. Okay, we'll skip forward from reading all of this. U'ma'ala ani alechem ki'ilu asitim et atzmechem. V'kein amru, b'balei tshuva ma'ala alav HaKadosh Baruch Hu ki'ilu asa et atzmo mechadash. So this letter of, he goes on to say that this letter of a Yud, which is the letter connected to this month of Elul, no matter what letter you might write in the Hebrew language, the first letter that you write is a Yud, right? No matter what letter that you write, that first dot of ink that you put onto the page is a Yud, because that's what a Yud is, one dot. And it says that a Baal Tshuva is, all of us, is someone who literally makes themselves a new person. They create themselves anew, like a totally new person. V'hine chodesh Elul hu miyuchad l'tshuva, v'nasina b'alei tshuva kivriyata chadasha ki'ilu asa et atzmam. In these days of Elul, there are special days of returning, and all of us who are returning, it's as if we're a completely new creation. As if we made ourselves by doing this, by returning. It's as if we're making ourselves. Okay, and it says here, which I said outside already, but it's really beautiful. This the little shape that a Yud makes, that first dot of ink that goes down on the page for any letter that's ever written. So this is a letter Yud, which is connected to Elul. And this letter, let's see, is ot miktav rishon ot nikra Yud. So this is just like the young maiden, right? We have the letter Yud, which is, it's like the first, it's like the beginning, the beginning of the life of a young maiden becoming a wife or a woman is the beginning, like that Yud. It's the beginning of the life on this level of being connected, of returning, and like a Baal Tshuva, and as if we're created as a new creation, like that first letter of the Yud. So I want to jump a little bit forward now to Yud Aleph, and we're not going to go through the whole Ma'amar because it's a lot, and we've already spent most of our time on this. It's a little bit more I want to get to after this. So now we're jumping to Yud Aleph. it says, V'ikdim lanu Hashem yitbarach chodesh Elul l'yemei ratzon lizman hatshuva kodem Rosh Hashanah. Hine Rosh Hashanah hu shte yamim, bet yamim, bezman hazeh. Shnei batei dinim kasher v'rafa kenoda mikitvei ha'arizah. So he says here in Yud Aleph that that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Elul, these days of Elul in preparation, days of Tshuva, before Rosh Hashanah. Right? We have these days to prepare for Rosh Hashanah. And what is Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is 2 days. In our days, we have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and each of these days, according to the teachings of the Arizal, the Arya Kadosh, has a different attribute to it. The first day is a harsher din, a harsher judgment day, and the second day is a less harsh judgment day. Okay, so there's two different batei dinim. There's 2 different courts. The harder one is the first day, and it gets to be less harsh on the second day. The first day is the secret underlying level of this is Leah, and the second day is Rachel. And it says that Hashem gave us basically the treatment and the healing before any of the difficulties come along, right? Before any sickness or illness that comes along, it says that he brings the refuah, the healing, before that. So he says that I didn't count. I didn't go and start counting the hours, but he says that the hours of the month of Elul, Taf Resh Tzadik Vav Sha'ot, which is 696 hours. These add up in Gematria to these 2 words that are described as the first 2 days of the year, Kashe v'Rafe. Kashe is the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which is the harsher din, and Rafe is the softer din. So if you count up the letters spelling this harsher, what is referring to the harsher din and the softer judgment, it's the exact same gematria, the exact same number as the number of hours in the month of Elul. Birtzot Hashem darkei ish gam oivav hainu hamekatrigim lifnei habatei dinim asher yavo b'nei Elokim yitatzev chule elu miyamamin lischut ve'elu smilim v'chule aval birtzot Hashem otanu b'tshuva tefila ve'elu Tafresh Tzadik Vav Sha'ot Kodem Rosh Hashanah Gam Oivav. Says that no matter what level anybody is on, everyone is in a great position to return and come back, whether it's us or even whether it's someone who's very close or someone who's very far. Yashlimito Bimtiku Habet Batei Dinim Kasher Rafa Vahatzarot Yitavchu Leratzon. So what was tsar? If you take the letters of the tsarot, which are any difficulties, any judgments, which comes, it's intense times. We're coming up on days of judgment, where we really need to look at ourselves and really need to reflect on what we've done and what we've been doing. But what was tsar? Those same letters of tsarot can be turned around and spell ratzon, which is willfulness. Hayinu b'ratzot Hashem v'chuli, that Hashem wants us to return. V'yitratzeh Hashem yitbarach Yisrael b'simcha v'yismach Yisrael b'osav. It says that Hashem, there's a pasuk that says Hashem wants us and is joyful, and we are joyful in the workings of Hashem and what Hashem does. So this wanting, this willfulness, is connected to these 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, both the harsher din and the softer din. No matter where we're coming from, any of the difficulties, any of the challenges and constrictions that we might come upon, the underlying deeper idea behind that is that there's this willfulness of connecting again to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and returning him. And he says this very same word that is the basis of tsar, of constriction and difficulty, which is the basis of ratzon, of willfulness. He says this is 2 times sameach. 2 times sameach, reflecting these 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. So the joy that comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in us returning, and the joy that comes to us that we can return, is built into these words reflecting the first 2 days of the year. And Elul, this month that is upon us in just a couple of days, has all of the energy in it for us to do this returning. Okay, so the nice big dose of the Bnei Yissaschar. And we have a couple minutes left. I want to read a couple of other things, share with you all. This is from the teachings of Reb Nassim, the Likutei Alachot, on Tehillim. Okay, so in Elul, and I specifically wanted to bring this up to remind myself also, because it's a very special thing, and Misugal thing in Elul, to say Tehillim, the Psalms, number 27, Chaf Zayin, right? LeDavid, Hashem Ori v'Yishi, Mimi Yira. It's a beautiful Tehillim, and we can go through it more, maybe starting next week. But I just want to bring a little introduction on it and give us a good reminder and a boost to remember to say this parak of Tehillim every day of Elul, really all the way through the Chagim, to the end of the Chagim, through Simchat Torah. We say this, it's a big segula to really be received fully. So the very first line, it says, Hashem Ori v'Yishi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, is my light and my salvation. Says Reb Nassim, Ha'ikar she'akol talui bo hu emet, leilech b'derech emet lefi madregato. So he says that the essence of everything, and everything goes after it, is truth. To go in the path of truth, everyone according to their level. Lekevan shehu b'madregat emet, azai kivechol nitlabesh bo or Hashem yitbarach ba'atzmo, asher chotamo emet. Okay? And since we're talking about truth and going in the path of truth, basically this truth is dressed in what he calls the light of the Creator, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Because it says, Chotamo emet, the seal of Hashem is truth. So if we're going in the path of truth, which is the essence of everything, then we're basically going in the path of the light of Hashem. Hashem Ori v'Yishi. God is my light. Vekevan she'Hashem orlo, Yuchol limtzo p'tachim arbe letzet mi'achoshech hagalut shehu sagor sham. So, since, and this is only a couple of lines, but it's a very deep and important concept, that when we go in the path of truth, we're basically wrapping ourselves up in the light of Hashem, because Hashem's seal is truth. Hashem is all about truth. And by going after truth, we bring upon us this light of the truth of Hashem. And since Hashem is truth, then no matter where we are, that doesn't mean that it's easy to find truth. It doesn't mean like, okay, I decided to find truth, I'm there. Not exactly. It's actually a whole journey to find truth. A person needs to make an effort to find truth. But just by wanting to try to find truth, just by connecting ourselves to the path of truth, and even anyone on whatever level they're on, trying to do that, then little openings come. Little openings come from the darkness, and then we can see our way out of the darkness, which is the galus, this long period of time where we're very far away until we really return, and where things are closed, and there's openings for us to find our way through. So this is reflected back to the Torah of Zohar in the Likutei Moharan, where Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Rabbi Nachman says, when a person is lost and trying to find truth, the way and that basically it means that like they're in darkness, right? It's so dark they don't know how to find their way out. So just by saying one true word, just by trying to seek out truth in the tiniest little way, coming from wherever you're holding, from whatever's happened up to that point, that little move towards truth shines a light. That's the Tzohar. The Tzohar is the known in the ark of Noach as could be a window, and it could be like a shining gem. And that shining gem, it shines by seeking out truth. That the light of truth, which is connected to the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shines into our darkness, and then we see little openings, and we need to go through those openings towards the truth. So this is the opening of this beautiful parak of Tehillim, Kaf Zayin 27, which we say every day. Bless me and bless you back. That we'll say it every day of Elul. That we say the very first words of this parak of Tehillim are, God is my light and my salvation. How can it be that we have this light and salvation? By seeking truth. By seeking truth, the light shines, and then we see little openings to continue to seek and try to find truth. And there's many more psukim in this that are beautiful. I just wanted to bring a little taste of that there. And I want to finish this class, with a a little piece from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Besht. And this is from the Parsha Ve'et Chanan, which I know we already passed it a few weeks ago, but it's still always relevant. These teachings are they're really they're good always. So it says here, B'Shem HaBesht Tam L'Shena. So why did I bring this? Because also, if we need to return, and if there needs to be an awakening, it must mean that we're asleep, right? And so the awakening from the sleep is really a key element here. And we know this comes up especially during the days of Elul, all the way through the Chagim and Rosh Hashanah, because we blow the shofar. And the shofar is known to wake people up, right? Like by hearing that sound of the shofar, by hearing the sound of the shofar, something very deep inside of us is awakened, and a deep awakening can happen, and we can really actually return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this little piece from the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh is talking about sleeping. Okay? So it says, what is the reason for sleep? She'ita b'shem ha'arizal b'katvim ta'amim niskavim lezeh shehu b'chinat mochin dekatnut kadei la'alot lemochin legadlut. So these are very deep concepts, and I'm not going to try to get into the Kabbalah of it all. That would be silly. But it says that there are very deep teachings from the Ariya Kadosh, the very deep and exalted reasons behind this, which has to do with the Mochin Dekatnud, in getting through Mochin Dekatnud in order to go up into Mochin Degadlut. Mochin Dekatnud is, say, small-mindedness, and getting through the small-mindedness that we face again and again in life, and getting through it and getting to a wide way of thinking, a big way of thinking, mochin de gadlut. V'al Baal Shem Tov amar derech mashal, l'melech shaya lo ben yachid yakar me'od, v'shalach oto lemilchama, u'bikesh mimenu shekol habiza v'shalal shiboz v'yishlol yishlach ma'at ma'at leveito la'achadim. So he explains this idea by giving a mashal, by telling us through a story. The Baal Shem Tov says this is like a king who has his only son, and he's very dear to him and precious to him, and he sends him out to war, and he requests of him that anything that he conquers, any of the treasures that they get by any of the conquering within the war, that he will send it piece by piece, little bits, piece by piece to his house, not all at once. V'sha'al oto haben halo yeh yoter kavod she'evi hakol b'pam echad. The son asked the father, wouldn't it make more sense and be more honorable to just send back everything all at once? Amar ha'av ani choshesh pen chas v'shalom yavo ha'oyev yitgaber v'yashiv mimcha hakol lechen tatzil achadim. V'nimshal muvan. Okay, he says the father says back to him, I'm concerned, I'm afraid, if, God forbid, the enemy that you're fighting in the war will come and strengthen himself against you on your way back, and you say you conquered and you got all of these treasures and you're bringing them back all at once. So I'm afraid he'll come up upon you and you'll lose everything. So it's better to send back piece by piece, little pieces as you conquer them, as opposed to doing it all together all at once. He says the what we can understand from this is understood. Kevan כשהנשמה מסוגלת כל היום תורה ומצוות ומעשים טובים, יש לחוש, פן יתגבר היצר וישדוד הכל חס ושלום, לכן ניתנה השינה, ועולה הנשמה וגונזת שם באוצר המשומר. Says we can understand from this kind of what it's like to be us, how we live. Why do we have to have these phases of being awake and being asleep? Because all of the efforts that we make, saying all of the treasures that we conquer, which really in life are doing mitzvot and ma'asim tovim and learning Torah, if it was all just one big piece together and not broken up at all, so because we have ups and downs, if we have a fall and when we have a fall, if it's all put together and there's no breaks in between, it could all be lost. So he says there's a deep reason for this sleep. Why? Because when a person is asleep, when they go to sleep, their soul goes up to heaven, and whatever it was that they did up to that point, say on that day, right? You have a day, hopefully we do lots of good things. So instead of a whole life just going through life and never sleeping and building the treasuries of all the good things that we're doing, and to bring it all in one big, at one time all together, we sleep in between. Night after night, we take a break from everything that we're doing and we sleep. And in that moment of sleeping, we reconnect to our deepest place in heaven and bring the treasures and store them there. Right? So there's something very deep about this sleep that we have, that it's very important because it's allowing us to bring up, say, reconnect whatever it is that we have accomplished up to that point, say that day, whatever happened, can be brought into the treasury for ourselves on high. And yet we need these breaks. We need the sleeping. So the greater, bigger sleep that we all have been in, our souls have been in, by being brought into this world and being in a human body and going through all of the challenge of the world, actually gives us a real opportunity to connect on a level that's piece by piece, little pieces. And in Elul, so bringing this now around to Elul, time of awakening, the awakening from above and the awakening from below. So this awakening from below that we are in these, stepping in a couple of days into these times of being able to really reconnect and awaken from the slumber. So the piece by piece work that we've been doing all along the way, the bigger picture doesn't get lost, right? Reminding us again, every little effort that we make, every little time that we, whatever it is, pray, learn Torah, do a mitzvah, do a chesed, do a masi, do something good to the world, bring something good to the world. Each time we do that, piece by piece, we return it. We fill up our treasure chest of the good things that we have been doing. And then in Elul, we're waking up more and more and more. And it's waking up, it's all very circular, because the waking up is not just to be awake. It's to awaken our will to be awake. And whatever sleeping that it's our nature, right? This is part of, we even need it. This is what the Baal Shem Tov was just saying, and based on the teachings of the Ariya Kadosh, that we, in a sense, we need this sleep to be able to bring piece by piece these little bits of good that we've been doing, and yet we also need to wake up from it, right? Everything, it's all circular, and we need to remember from the beginning these teachings of the Bnei Yisachar. So maybe they're a little bit dense and difficult to understand on one level, but on the other level, it's very simple to understand that these times, this month that we're stepping into, is filled with potential for us to return. How could it be? Because even before we were created and we ever did anything good which gave us the merit to return, the thought of us came up in the mind of the Creator before even creation. So it's bringing us back to the very, very beginning, before we ever even did anything. And this gives us the strength and the awakening to return. And then once we return, we awaken even more to return. So it's all a big circle, and we're basically very, very, very. It's very, very exciting times, because we're stepping into a time where we have, daily we say this Perek Tehillim Kaf Zayin 27 in the Psalms. We say this: God is my light. I'm remembering. I'm searching for truth, and anyone in their place, wherever they're holding, saying that and deciding, now I'm going towards truth. I'm choosing to go towards truth. Then a little light shines on us, and we know where to go to try to find the truth. Right? Every little effort that we make matters, and it's opening up more and more. So I want to give us a blessing to really make the most of these times and these days. It's an incredibly packed time and with there's just that treasury of truth and light that's on the other side of the efforts that we make, no matter how small they might feel. The tiniest things that we could do those tiny little openings, once you go through the opening, then there are bigger openings, right? And the searching for truth is clarified, because by wanting the truth, then we find a little bit of truth. And by having a little bit of truth, then we want more truth, and we seek it more, and it opens up more. So I want to bless us, really, not only to make the most of these times, but yes, to make the most of these times, and also to return to who we truly are, which is what we're here for. It's the whole point that we're here. And returning to who we truly are is something that brings us back deeper than even us being created. It's so deep inside of us that by making the tiniest little efforts that we make along the way in this month, sometimes it might feel like, how can I really do anything to really make a difference? A lot of times it doesn't feel like we're making a difference. But those tiny little steps that we take, we are actively and actually becoming a part of this returning, which was built into us from the beginning. And therefore, we're bringing ourselves back to who we really are from the very beginning. So bless us to do it b'simcha. And thank you so much for joining in the class, those of us who are with us together now, and those who will see it later. And chodesh tov, we should be blessed. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, now is a good time to ask. And the sun's going to come up here pretty soon, so we're gonna start a new day. All right. So have a good one. Chodesh Tov. And we're going to be learning once a week. So join us next week. Tell your friends. Pass the word on. And be well. Thank you. Take care.